and welcome to the Mindful Mums webinar. It's lovely to see a few of you jumping on. So welcome to Mindful Mums. We are here to help you suppress your worry and your doubt and your negative mindset and better manage your thoughts and your emotions so that you build your confidence, you build your self-esteem, and you can live a life without feeling completely overwhelmed, as the majority of us mums do, and have that nagging fear and anxiety. So me and Will, we're all about growth, growing ourselves so that we can become the best of ourselves and achieve all the things that our heart desires. I'm Emma, and this is the wonderful 𝗲𝗓. How you doing, Will?
Not too bad. Good morning. We've just had a little warm-up chat, so we're all fired up and ready for this number 2.
We are. So the crux of what we're all about here in Mindful Mums is we all spend very, very little time on our own mental well-being, on our own thoughts and our own emotions. And one thing that I've come to realize over the last few years is that if I can really get to grips with my thinking and the way that I'm feeling, I just seem to have better outcomes. So if I can sort of master my mind, in turn, I tend to be able to sort of master my life. I met Will, as you may or may not know, but I met Will a few years back. He's amazing. He's a coach. He works with all sorts of people, all walks of life, don't you, Will?
𝗲𝗵𝗲 as well,
and myself, and he's just amazing at what he does. And what we're all about, and something we're really passionate about doing, is providing mums with like a tool belt, if you like, a toolkit of different tools, techniques that they can use and they can plug into as and when all these uncomfortable feelings arise, whether that is fear or a lack of confidence or doubt or low self-esteem or just gaining clarity, whatever it may be, a bit of self-love. So that's what we're all about. And today we want to talk, Will, about reducing overwhelm, overthinking, and then destructive behavior. Because I always feel for myself, and when I speak to other mums and friends, it tends to be the overthinking that leads to the overwhelm, which then leads for me to go and maybe grab a bottle of wine and have a glass of it, which then leads to me feeling like crap the next day and very unproductive and just not, I say not firing off all cylinders, but when you're a mum, it's like you have this big, long to-do list of things that you want to get done. Work can come into that, but, you know, being a mum in itself is a job in itself. And I think we have this list, and it seems to be as we're ticking one thing off of our list, something else just seems to get added. It just never seems to end. Sometimes you might get to the bottom of it and you can breathe a sigh of relief, but then it all starts all over again, and it just feels so consuming and overwhelming. So my first question to you is, what can we do to manage our emotions and that feeling of overwhelm and overthinking?
Can you put up the 7 stages of thinking?
Of course I can.
Emma. So, and that's better to look at than probably my faces. So, yeah. So with mindset, we've got to appreciate that mindset is, yeah, there you are. Thank you. Mindset is only half the job. So if we can get our mindset, now what do I mean by mindset? Mindset is thoughts and feelings. I think we talked about this last week. But what we've got to appreciate, mindset is half the job. We've got to get our thoughts in alignment, and we've got to get our feelings in alignment. And then the next bit is the actions, because we can have a great mindset, Emma, can't we? We can have a fantastic mindset, but if we're not, you know, if we're not doing the do, if we're not doing the action, if we're not kind of getting our journal, analyzing what's going right and what's not going right, seeing what's working and what's not working, if we don't do what we call in our industry the work, then you become even more disenfranchised and fed up, because now you know what your problems are, awareness, but you're not doing anything about it. So it would almost be better in the beginning to not do any of the work and not build a mindset, because, you know, what's the old saying, ignorance is bliss. So, you know, once you get into this mindset, you've got to push it over the line, which means that you do start sorting your thoughts and feelings out and taking responsibility for them. And like I've mentioned, and I will constantly mention all the time, for years, behavior change was all about, let's look at our habits, let's look at our behaviors, as you can see on the chart, let's look at our actions. And the problem is, it's a bit like that grass that I always talk about. If you just mow the grass, it looks great for a moment, but you don't pull the weeds up, the weeds are going to come back. And the weeds are the thoughts and the feelings that we need to look at. So, when you talk about overwhelm, let's just not just talk about mums here, because when I'm coaching high performers, let's give mums here on Mindful Mums a context. When I'm coaching high performers, whether it's sports, MPs, influencers, whoever, the big thing I'm always saying to them is, you're not allowed to call these practices high performance if it is at the expense of your health and well-being and, physical health, mental health, and relationships. Because what I noticed at the top end, I'll come back to mums in a minute, but what I noticed at the top end is that too many high performers have consequences, and the consequences are their mental health, their emotional health, and particularly their relationships, or the quality of their relationships. So bringing it back to mums, what we've got to appreciate is, okay, and it's all good having this practice, called the work, called personal development. But what we've got to be careful of is that we always pay attention to our mental, physical, emotional health, and particularly our relationships. Because if you're busy and you're running frantically at 100 mile an hour and you're not really enjoying the experiences, it's almost like you're reading one book after another, or one chapter of your life after another, but you're not having a time to enjoy it, to absorb it, to reflect on it. So, we know, and me and you have talked about this before, Emma, one of the biggest problems we have, which contributes to overwhelm, is that we're trying to do it all, we're trying to be it all, we're trying to achieve it all. It's too much. And we're going to come back to an exercise later in the hour, which is called 𝗂𝗏. We're going to do an exercise called 𝗂𝗏, and it's a really good way to kind of work with with your journal. But answering your question, what can we do to manage our emotions? Well, it starts, as you see with this chart, by managing your thoughts. We talk about all the time, me and Jane, my partner, a thought is just a thought, and a thought can be changed. Do not BS yourself that, oh, this is just the way I am. I'm always been an overthinker. I've always been an overfeeler. Do not let your mind bullshit you that you are just fixed state. That's what we call a fixed mindset. We've got to appreciate that at the moment of where you are, the reason you are like that is that you have simply trained your mind, which is thoughts and feelings, to act in a certain way. Now, what we've got to be careful of with overthinking, there are two lots of overthinking. There is good overthinking, which is problem solving,
Yes.
which, you help yourself to move forward and upward away from the problem, to resolve the problem, to stop self-sabotaging. And then there's bad overthinking that moves you backwards and downwards, which is basically on the carousel. You don't get anywhere. You just keep chewing, what do we call ruminating? You keep ruminating the same old problem, and you're not doing any action. So one of the big things that you will be able to help with your overwhelm is to make sure that you don't put too many problems in your basement, metaphorically, which means don't put off too many things. Because if you keep avoiding that confrontation with your mother-in-law, with that friend, if you keep denying your feelings and pushing them in the basement, if you keep not facing that confrontation at work or with your partner and holding that emotion, what you're doing is you're building up a pressure inside of you. And the overwhelm is literally the hot water cylinder blowing because it's got no valve. I mean, does that kind of speak to you
Yeah,
as
and do you
well?
know what? You saying that, it makes me remember we had a coaching session a couple of years back, and I remember you saying to me about doing something that I never did.
Yeah,
And you know what? All it's done is magnified it. I've never confronted that. I'm sure you know what that is, but what I'm getting from you, Will, as well, is it's awareness. I'm getting this word awareness, um, and us really becoming aware of our thoughts and our emotions and something our feelings, and why we're feeling that way. Something you touched on last week, which I wrote down. You said emotions are energy in motion.
Yeah.
Um, and it's had me thinking about it this week, because when I have limiting thoughts, negative beliefs, I'm now trying to remind myself that I'm lowering my own energy by having those limiting and negative thoughts. I'm obviously lowering my own energy. I'm lowering my own energy, which isn't going to help me or support me when it comes to overwhelm. It's actually going to make me feel even worse.
Yeah, yeah. So always say to yourself, whoever's listening today, words are spells. Words are spells, and they have power. So if you're talking to yourself and berating yourself and self-shaming yourself and self-guilting yourself, that those words have power, and they will make you feel a certain way. What we're talking about, Emma, what you're describing there is an emotional state. The emotional state, which is the energy we feel, it's not rocket science. You know, we don't have to be Einstein to work out when we're in a high vibration, high emotional state, we can take on the world. We can confront, we can challenge, we can deal with that emotion. When we're in a low vibration, low energy state, we go into the cave and we hide, and we push emotions into the basement, and we don't confront that person, and we people please, and we don't deal with the stuff that's in front of us. So to wrap this kind of question up, I want us to imagine that there are two. Imagine a pond, and we're all ponds. We've been called worse, haven't we? And we're all ponds, and there's literally an inlet which is bringing fresh water, fresh new energy, and there's an outlet which is getting rid of all the toxic, dirty
Yeah,
water.
yeah,
That's how literally a pond survives and
yeah,
flourishes and doesn't go
yeah,
stagnant. Now, we've got to look at it from two ways. There's things that we've got to be moving forward with to help us with our overwhelm. So that's moving away the fresh water, which is, you know, if you're overwhelmed, what do we do straight away? Get outside. Get outside. Take a moment and breathe. You know, exercise is a big one that's going to help you, you know, because the body, when there's energy stuck inside of us, motion is energy, like we're talking about. When there's energy stuck inside of us into the container, we need to create a valve. And that valve might be walking the dog, getting out in nature, you know, moving, you know, doing the cleaning, you know, going shopping, you know, meeting up with a friend for a jog. Or, you know, the worst thing we can do when energy is fizzing inside of us, which is what overwhelm is, we don't feel overwhelmed in the head, we might get headaches, but overwhelm is
the
predominantly in the
body.
body. It's in the organs and it's in the muscles. That's where we feel it, particularly in the gut, in the shoulders, in the heart area. So what we've got to do is not sit there. That is the worst thing that we can do. I remember going up years ago to Scotland. Nobody ever warns you about this when you go up to the lakes and the highlands and the midges. Have you ever been up to Scotland? The midges, nobody tells you that if you stand still, the
They'd get
midges
you.
will eat you alive. Now, they move so slowly, you've only got to walk and they
And
won't be able
then,
to catch you up.
yeah,
And it's a bit like emotion in the body. If we can keep moving, we can keep ahead of the emotions. Now, that's at one end. That's the one end, doing the positive things. But what we've got to look at the inlet at the other end. And that's what we're talking about by we've still got to be dealing with our emotions, facing them, dealing with our problems. Because if all we ever do is get outside, clean air, buy water, trees, exercise, run, you know, do yoga, if we do all those things, great, but that's the going one way from the pond. If we're not stopping the feed coming from the other end of the pond, which is not dealing with our shit, not dealing with our stuff, we're kind of only dealing with half the problem.
I love that. Words are spells. I love that. And they have power.
They do.
Something I do in the morning, which just seems to put me in a better state, is my affirmations, which is your words, right?
Yeah.
Just saying the words of the person that I want to become. So if that's around confidence, or if that's around self-love, or whatever it could be, courage.
Good one.
I talk to myself in the present tense as if I am that person. And I definitely think over time, when you do that repeatedly, initially it feels a little bit, it doesn't feel very real. It's like you're lying to yourself a little bit because you don't really feel it.
Mm.
But over time, when you keep saying it and then you can connect it to maybe something that you've done where you did have the confidence or you did have the courage, you start to believe it, and then
Yeah.
it becomes who you are.
Yeah. That's a spot on word, becomes, because years ago when we were doing our coaching badge, there was a lot of talk about, oh, fake it until you make it, wasn't there? You know, fake it until you make it, which is half true. But what we got to be careful of, the mind and the body know the score. They know
Yeah,
truth. And if you
yeah,
keep saying, I'm abundant, I've got lots of money, I've got a happy relationship, and you haven't, what
yeah,
you're doing is really verbalizing your wish list.
yeah.
Although it's worthy and it's good, what I loved what you just said is becoming. So what your affirmation statement would say is, I am becoming more loving. I am becoming more abundant, because then your mind knows that's true. You know, years ago it used to be, I'm rich, and you know, I've got my vision board and I've got that big house in front of me, I've got that loving partner. When the reality is, you're looking in the mirror, you haven't had a partner for 5 years, you know, you don't live in that lovely house, you just end up feeling worse about yourself. And because you're lying to yourself with your affirmations, part of your body's kind of rejecting it on a subconscious level. But you've only got to, you know, put the word in becoming, and it means that you're moving towards it. It's a simple little tweak, because your body knows the score. Your body can't be lied to. You know, that's why I always say the body eavesdrops on the head. So anything we create in the mind, we've got to be really careful, because the body is listening all the time. And so if you tell yourself that I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not thin enough, I'll never have a partner, I'm a bad mother, I'm a bad partner, if you tell yourself enough times, your subconscious, which lives really a lot in your body, will eventually believe you.
It's not only thinking it, it's feeling it as well.
Look at the chart. It's feeling. You've got to get your feelings, your emotions. Same thing. You've got to get your emotions, because then the way you act and the way you respond, or yeah, the way you kind of respond to your emotions will be a direct result of how you set your thoughts and feelings up.
Love that. Brilliant. Love that. Okay, going to jump onto the second question that I've got, which is, so many mums, they feel like they're alone in it. They feel like it's just them. Um, and they've got all of these struggles. And I suppose they look outside. I think we did touch on this a bit last week, but they'll look outside of them and see everybody else and think everyone else is doing okay, but they're not.
Mm.
And I think sometimes because of that, they're scared to verbalize how they're feeling to maybe their friends or their family members or whatever, because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to feel judged or seen to be a failure. How can they sort of move past that? And I know we've probably touched on this a little bit because you were
It's
saying
a big
about the
thing.
power,
Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, how would you get over that
authenticity.
at the moment, Emma? How would you, or what has
I
worked
think
for
it
you?
comes back to
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
I think it comes back to this and just being aware. Because I mean, I say a lot of the time, we need to be authentic, but it's actually really hard to be authentic, especially if you don't believe in yourself and you have
yeah.
all these doubts. It's really hard because you're like, why would I want to express that to everybody because of that reason? It's just going to make me feel worse if people start judging me. Um, I think for myself, it it is a case of really having an intention of what I want in my life, and
Yeah.
looking at well, okay, I'm here, but where is it I want to go? And if where I want to go is over there, how am I going to get there? And learning through other people that I've seen maybe achieve some of the things that I would love to achieve, and then just taking it one very, 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 very small step at a time,
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
just changing the way I see things. And it's funny because now when I look back, and there were so many times I'd be putting maybe a bit of content out there, or going live and talking about something, and then I would switch off and I'd be like, oh my god, that was terrible, and I should have said that and I didn't say that, and beating myself up. But what I came to realize over time is, rather than deleting some of that content, just leave it, because that's me being authentic. That was me just being me. And the more I was doing that, the better I started to feel.
Yeah, yeah, good. Right. Here's something to give you context with a lot of people that I coach. I was shocked kind of 10 years ago when I started to coach TV presenters and influencers and people in the public eye, people that would be in the papers or on television. I was shocked how many of them have never in their lifetime ever watched back themselves on social media or television. So I've got some clients that have been in TV 30, 40, well, even one I'm thinking in particular lives in America now, 40 years, and her whole family were in acting. Father was a director, mother was an actress, well-known one. And they've been in since teens, they've been in TV world.
Mm.
And yet still today, 4 decades later, they haven't got the confidence to watch themselves back in the programs that they have started. That's insane. That's insane. So it's not mothers.
Well, that'd be where the confidence, yeah, that'd be where the confidence comes from, wouldn't it? By
You you
looking back
you
and
think
seeing
you think so?
how far you've come.
You would think so.
Yeah.
But we've always got to appreciate with this journey called life that we're all different. Now it works for these people because they've
Mm.
decided that their mastery is in the delivering, being present in the moment. And whether they're working for a brand or a commercial or working on a TV show, their number one thing is, I can't watch myself back because I'm a high performer. I can't watch myself back because I will be overly critical. That's why they do it. That's why they won't watch themselves back. But they've kind of come to an agreement in themselves that I don't have to analyze, overanalyze because of my perfectionism, because that's what got them to the top of the tree in their profession. I can't overanalyze, otherwise I'll start picking it to bits and I will fall apart. Because I've asked this question of several of them that do not watch themselves back. And I think we've got to learn from them, because sometimes we think perfectionism is getting everything right and then kind of putting it up in lights and over analyzing it and picking the bones out of it, when
Mm.
really you've got to kind of have an attitude of, it's great to be perfectly imperfect. It's great to be fabulously flawed. We've got to accept that we're becoming. We've got our flaws. We've got our kind of funny little ways. We all grow in different ways. We've all got our fears, and what we've got to do. Socrates said it in 2 words, didn't he? Know thyself. Know thyself. Forget how other people build confidence and expose their feelings. If you don't like exposing, what we're talking about here is exposing our feelings, isn't it, to others and being open. If you don't like that and you can't even do it with your best friend, I would always say, there are some people that I deal with, they will tell everything to everyone.
Mm.
There are others that will expose their deepest inner truths to only a select people in their inner circle. There are some people that can't even express their deepest wishes, their deepest flaws, their deepest emotions to even their best friends. I'm talking about a woman here now that I'm thinking of. She won't even express her deepest feelings to her several best friends or even her partner. So what does she do? You think, oh my God, how does she get over that? She does it with journaling. She
Right.
does it with journaling. So she
Yeah.
uses the journal as the valve.
Okay.
So there is every different. So please, this is a big takeaway for today. There are several different options. Don't try and be something you're not. If you feel comfortable expressing your feelings, great. That's the best, easiest way to open the valve. If you only do it with a select few people in an inner circle, great. If for some reason you haven't yet built the confidence to share your inner world with anyone, thoughts and feelings, what you're really thinking, what you're really feeling, fine. But you've got to have some outlet. If you haven't got a therapist or coach and you're not sharing it with anyone, you have got to do journal work. You've got to do journal work. And so being authentic, getting out of your comfort zone, and like you kind of said, alluded to a few minutes ago, Emma, you know, we've all trained our mind, thoughts and feelings a certain way. We didn't come into the world fully formed, high functioning, wired, ready to go. We were a clean slate. And literally, because of our life experiences, who our parents were, how they were, we've kind of taken on all of their DNA and also their habits and behaviors. But just as we've trained ourselves to act a certain way, which is not share our feelings and not be authentic, it doesn't mean that we can't do it differently moving forward. But like you just said, do it tiny little baby steps at a time. So if you want to expose a little truth and be a little bit more authentic and tell that person, that friend that has really been bugging you for months and years, but she always puts you down, decide one day to control your feelings. And I'm going to say something now. I've got to say something. Now, that might be the first time. And if we do the first thing in anything in our life, it feels a bit awkward. But I guarantee you, and we all know this, do it once and the second time becomes a lot easier. We've already opened the door, haven't we?
Yeah. That first time, but that's when it comes. I think we can come back to all of this. What are the things that we're saying to ourselves as to why we can't, why we can't open up, or why we can't be authentic?
Yeah.
And that leads in to the next question, which is the people pleasing.
And we've all been there.
And how we stop doing it, because so many of us mums, we do it. We do the things that we really, sometimes we don't want to do, sometimes we haven't got the time to do, but we do them because we don't want to say no. We don't want to say no. We just want to say yes, yes, yes. And again, this all comes back to the overwhelm, because we're saying yes to all these people. We're taking on way too much than we can actually manage. It's bringing up all these emotions of frustration and anger and resentment, whatever it may be. And then we're not, like you said, we're not opening the valve to express those feelings. We're just pushing them down, which then leads to destructive behavior, I suppose.
Yeah. People please. The only people who are not, you're a people pleaser, Emma. I'm a people pleaser. Most of my clients are people pleasers. The only people who are not people pleasers tend to be psychopaths. Now, I'm sure we haven't got any psychopaths on it today, but hopefully. But what I'm trying to show the point is that the reason we are people pleasers is that we have been hardwired for thousands of years to want to be accepted by the tribe.
Yeah.
So this is in our blood. This is in our genetics. This has come down through the eons, thousands and thousands of generations. If you didn't work with the tribe and you weren't doing what you're supposed to do as your role and being that kind of people pleaser, be that good girl, be that good boy, follow the crowd, be part of the whole. If you don't want that, and you don't want disapproval, which is what we're talking about, isn't it? We're talking about disapproval here. You literally had to be a people pleaser. And so we're working when it's probably people pleasing is probably one of the top 5 things we're going to work with in our life, because we're going against our genetics, we're going against our DNA. There's a part of it which is good, because we want social approval. We want to feel part of the crowd. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel whole. We want to follow the leader. We want to follow the culture. The problem comes is when we step over and we go way too, it's an overreach. So when we overreach and we become people pleasers, what we're really doing is saying yes to life and everyone else, but we're saying no to ourselves. Because every time we people please, we're taking our power away. You were talking about power. We're taking our energy away. Every time we people please, we are keeping ourselves small. So we're basically lifting the other person up, and we're deflating ourselves. So what we've got to realize is that people pleasing is just a trait. We've trained ourselves in the worst aspects of it. The basic aspects are kind of hardwired into us. And the question is, when it gets to a point of overreach, when we're people pleasing, because we just don't like social disapproval, we don't like people to feel ill of us. We've got a whole world that, because of social media now, that is addicted to this thing called FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. And you could say that's a sister or brother of people pleasing. And social media doesn't do it any good, because FOPO is really, if we worry more what other people think of us than we do of ourselves, we're really in problems, because what's going to happen is that our self-esteem and all the kissing cousins of confidence, so self-worth, self-value, so they're all going to crash. So we've got to work on people pleasing and its brother or sister, which is FOPO, and realize that we can't give life, other people, everything they want all the time. If you live your life where you never ever want to be felt as disapproved, or feel an outsider, or feel that you put your head above the parapet and have it chopped off, if you haven't ever got the confidence to do that, you're going to live a constrained life, and it's going to be lots of suffering, because a constant addictive people pleaser is someone that is going to live a small life, and you're going to have lots of overwhelming emotions that you're going to put on that pond. I mean, how do you deal with
Makes you
people
sick,
pleasing?
right?
Yeah, it does make you sick eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be terrible. I will say, I mean, when I was living back in Essex, I used to be terrible, because I used to really fear other people's opinions of me, which I think is one of the reasons I got into doing this kind of work, because I had to do something that just did feel quite authentic, and just share what I was going through, because I saw so many other people going through it as well. Um, how did I deal, or how do I deal with it? I just try and manage it, in the sense I certainly still do it, for sure. Um, but I'm more aware. I've just become more aware of my
Right.
actions, and what I'm saying yes and what I'm saying no to. And I
Right.
suppose I try not to jump straight in. That's one thing I try not to do. So whereas before, if someone asked me for some support or some help, and to say no is very difficult for me to say that to somebody, but if someone asked me, rather than me just go yes, I would maybe sit back, and rather than message back or answer back straight away, I would just be a bit like, just I'll let you know, give me time to have a think about it, I'll let you know, and I can see what I've got going on, or something
Brilliant.
like that.
Brilliant.
So I don't just respond in the moment. I try and, again, become a bit more aware and have a think about what else I've got going on. But I do hate saying no. I really do.
And that's okay. And I think what we've got to accept, a bit like fear, let's not bullshit ourselves that we're ever going to master fear, because you can't.
Mm.
Some fear is good, keeps you sharp, keeps you
Yeah,
alive. A lot
massively.
of fear.
Yeah.
So
But
I want you to see, people pleasing like fear. You're never going to master it, but you're going to manage it.
yeah. And
Because
I think, yeah. I was just going to say, well, I think what you just said there, the terminology that we use around different things. So the way that we see fear, a lot of people just want to run away from it, because they go, God, it's fearful, it's scary. But another thing I found, and this links into the people pleasing, is where I've really done a bit of work around these things that I fear, and trying to embrace it and hold on to it and actually feel it, and keep it warm, if that makes sense. Um, I see it differently. I now see fear as actually it's a good thing, because I know it's
Brilliant.
keeping me sharp, like you just said. It's keeping me sharp, and it's keeping me motivated. It's moving me forwards. I'm growing because I'm confronting my fears. I know that I've witnessed that. That's part of me. So the terminology we use around these different words like fear and people pleasing, if we can get that right, that's another way of overcoming that need to please all the time.
Yeah. I love what you said about you know, what I love is you've given some great examples about how you've dealt with people pleasing, and the best one is what I call the fire break. You know, what chronic people pleasers tend to do is jump straight in. If you remember, we've all done this before, probably, Emma. We jump in within a second of someone asking us something, and we say yes. And then 10 seconds later, we're like, oh God, why have I said that? You know, so create a fire break, and I guarantee you, you will instantly overnight cut down 2/3 of the things that you say yes to straight away. Because what you've basically done is, let me just go away and chew that. Let me just go and think about it. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no. I just need to digest it and sit with it. Look at what else is going in my environment. What challenges have I got? Have I got the mind space? The problem is, if we keep saying yes to everything, always, you know, chronic people pleaser, and we haven't got the energy in our tank to even deal with our own life over here and relationships and challenges, we're kind of spending energy that we haven't got in the bank, the energy bank. So, you know, it's not that we don't want to do it. We've got this wiring inside of us, Emma, that wants to say yes, that wants to be liked, that wants to be loved, that wants to be kind of seen as noble and part of the tribe. We're fighting our own DNA, our wiring. So you've got to be aware that you've got to manage it. And the best way of starting to manage it, two things: start to create a dialogue or a list in your journal for the amount of times that you can start to say no instead of yes. And then you'll start to see some visual feedback. Oh, I always used to say yes to that and that and that and that. Oh, I've said 2 no's then, huh? Brilliant. That's progress. And that's how we do it. One no at a time. One no at a time. And we start to gradually change our mind to go, now sometimes a no can be, you know, okay, for me this time it's a no, only because I'm doing this, this, and this. You know, normally it would be a yes, I'm going to say to this, but I've got this on and this on and this on. Now, we've got to value our own mind space. We've got to value our own relationships. We've got to value our own emotions and time. Because if we don't, and this is where we come into the area of boundaries, isn't it? If we don't, what happens? We've got no boundaries, and then, you know, Will, Emma, you know, such and such, they're known as, oh, just dump it on them. They'll always find time. They're classic people please. They don't say this in their mind, but what they've done, they've pigeonholed you and me, Emma, into someone that always says yes, always to everything. And they've just got used to it. It's a program. So, of course, when we step back and go, hang on, no really means no, they're like, oh, what's wrong with them?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yet,
yeah.
and yet we're saying yes to all that stuff. It's quite insane, isn't it?
And you know what, as well, it becomes, the more you do it, it actually it becomes more uncomfortable, because you're not actually being authentic, are you?
Yeah.
You're saying yes to something you actually want to say no to. And then after that, after that response, you're then beating yourself up thinking, why did I do that? I shouldn't have said yes. I've got all these things to do, and it's moan, stress, more stuff in your, on your list to get done. So you're feeling less and less authentic the more you're saying yes, which makes you feel uncomfortable, which actually leads to the negative thinking and the
Overwhelm.
uncomfortable emotions and the overwhelm, and the experiences that we get then aren't going to be the ones we want.
Again, you're feeding the pond with
Yeah,
bad stuff, with overwhelm.
bad stuff. Yeah.
And you know, the word that we should always look for in our head just before we're about to say yes or no, if you hear the word should pop up in your head, it's a great marker, this one. If you hear the word, oh, I should do that for my mother-in-law, I should do that for my neighbour, no. Usually the language should be, I really want to. There's a desire there, there's a need there, there's a want there. The minute you say, oh, I should, listen to that energy behind the word should. Should means that you don't really want to do it, you want to say no, but your people pleasing aspect says, oh, I should do it because people will still look favorably on me. Well, they're not going to look favorably on you if you have a mental breakdown because you're overwhelmed. They're not going to look favorably on you if you've kind of lost your mind because you've just got too much sort of buzzing in your head and you're trying to keep everyone happy always. So this is about taking back control, establishing boundaries, and starting to start saying a lot more no's, or a lot more let me come back to yous, or let me ponder that, let me reflect on that. We don't have to put the bullet in the gun and fire it straight away every time. Give ourselves space to just take a moment, take a breath, almost like what they call the yoga breath. Take 5 seconds and give a yes or a no after that, or even say, if you feel under pressure, come back to them. Let me, and then put it in abeyance. But don't fire off a yes straight away.
And sometimes you find when you do give it that bit of time, when you go back to them, they may turn and go, oh, don't worry, I've got that sorted. Or actually, I've changed, I'm now doing something else or something like that. So it just gives you that bit of space.
Yeah.
But I love that, the fire breaks.
Yeah, give yourself a fire break. And it will change your life. And decide that if nothing changes, nothing changes, and we know that. And if people pleasing is a problem for you, set it up in your journal practice and start saying, how many more no's can I start saying to people? It's going to feel uncomfortable at the beginning. It's like doing anything for the first time. You do a bungee jump, you have your first child, the first of that is the most uncomfortable, and a bit like marriage, it's the first one's the most painful.
You're speaking from experience. I'm not there yet. Turn out, might as well be. I've been with him long enough. So the last question I've got for you, Will, is how do we stop behaving the things we know don't work for us and that fill us with shame? So I know we're coming back to this, and I wondered actually if we wanted to jump in to another slide, which is I've got so many slides on here, Will, that we've not covered. Was it the habit tracker? Or was it the circle of influence?
No, I tell you what, let's go. It feels right now to do a little exercise called too much, right? Let's do an exercise called too much. So, so this is to help with your overthinking, your overwhelm, and behavior change. So I'm going to ask you in a minute what you feel that you do too much, and I want other people to kind of think of it in their own life. But I'm going to give a bit of a shopping list first. So this is a journal practice. I want people to kind of go away with and really give this some thought. Now, I sat down the other day and just looked at my clients for the last week on what they've been struggling with too much. So at the top of the page, you kind of write, what am I doing too much of? Now, what I found out with my clients, they're racing through the day too much. It's a blur, right? They're too much trying to be perfect. Perfect mother, perfect sister, perfect brother, perfect daughter, all of that stuff, too much, perfect. There's too much trying to keep up with everyone else, right? Too much living in the past or the future, which is not being present. Too much procrastination, which, as we know, is a build-up of energy. Too much procrastination. Procrastination doesn't mean you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything on the outside, but procrastination means it's all going on under the waterline. Lots of overthinking, lots of overfeeling. So that's procrastination. So anyone that says that procrastination is, you know, you're not doing anything, believe me, you are. It's just out of the eye line. Too much sort of mentality of having it all, wanting it all, doing it all, being it all. I mean, classic example of mothers, isn't it, Emma? You know,
I was going to
and
say
you
keeping busy. We
keeping
always feel we need
busy,
to keep really busy.
busy, too much.
Can't
It's too
sit
much
down
of
and
it.
have a cup of tea, a hot cup of tea. It's always got to be normally it's a cold cup of tea, you know?
Yeah, it's just not right. So too much social media, too much
Mm.
phone, too much news. Why is that wrong? Because, you know, images and words, as we know, are spells, and they bring overwhelm. You've only got to go on your phone, comparison. We've got the disease of comparison, haven't we? That's what social media gives us. Too much fear and anxiety. You know, some fear is good for us. It's normal. Some anxiety is good. It protects us. Too much of it is not normal, and that's where it's too much. Self-shame and self-guilt, recrimination. Oh my God, too much of it. Too much absorbing other people's emotions rather than just observing them. Too much
Too
running
much of
away.
living in the past, right?
Living in the past. Good one. Good one. You know, too much running away from our emotions rather than sitting with them and facing them and feeling through them. Too much FOPO, fear of other people's opinions, and people pleasing, which we've just talked about, and too much self expectations. So what would be yours, Emma? What straight away comes to mind to you for
Oh,
too much?
self expectations for sure. What I
Mm,
expect of myself. Comparison in where it is I'm heading, and wanting to get there, and comparing myself and my abilities to other people that are just on a completely different journey, and level of what I'm on. So, say, comparing my beginning to their middle or their end,
mm,
you
yeah.
know, busyness. I, yeah, the need to have to keep busy all the time and not be able to, and I say this, I work on this every day, and I have a little routine in place, but that one that I said, sitting down, the guilt of sitting down, because there's always something to do as a mum, and a working mum. There's always something that I could be doing. So to sit down and, you know, have a cup of tea and watch the telly for 20 minutes, I feel guilty if I do that. Um, I wouldn't say procrastination for sure. Overthinking, again, this is something I work on every day, but it definitely is there. Cleaning.
Yeah.
I feel the need to hoover like 50 times a day. Don't ask me why. Drives Matt insane because he's like, you've only just hoovered, but I have to hoover again. Um, yeah, I think trying to be it all as
Yeah.
well. Be a
Yeah.
good partner to Matt, support him as much as I best I can, and taking care of the kids, and managing my workload,
Yeah.
and, you know, trying to meet my own vision of what I want to create. So trying to do it all.
Yeah. So you know, most of the things I've written down and just read out are taken from a lot of high performing people and mums and entrepreneurs and anyone else I've coached in the last week, and my own stuff as well. Just because we're coaches, we're not immune from this stuff, are we? So
No.
I could have written down another 4 times as much. I did. I wrote down this list. It just kept going and going and going. And I thought, oh my God, how much stuff are we doing like too much of? So here's the exercise. You first of all, you know, with journal practice, the reason you're doing this is that it's to do with raising the awareness. Until you can't change anything in your life until you first notice it, become aware of it, identify it, and then take ownership of it. Right?
Yes.
What you've done just now, you took ownership by admitting openly what you're struggling with too much.
Yeah.
What we've got to do that with ourselves and write it down in the journal. Write these things down in the journal, and then you're already halfway home, because once you're starting to
Yes.
become aware of what's not working, you know that you've got to do something about it. Now, if I got you to grade those, Emma, and that's what I'm asking people on here to do, is to go away, do some journal work, and grade them, which are the worst ones. Because what you want to do is start with the worst ones, not the easiest ones. You want the ones that are giving you most amount of pain and bringing your energy down the most. So it might be trying to keep up, or classic procrastinator. You know yourself better than anyone. So write them down and grade them. And then the part 2 of this exercise is write some little stories of where it tends to show up for you. So it might be to do with procrastination. It might be to do with self-shame and self-guilt, where you just constantly, day after day, you keep, self-criticizing yourself. So grade them and write some little examples down, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to match the patterns. When you look back over a week, 2 weeks, a month, you're trying to identify the patterns of where your issues are and which are the worst ones. So write them down. Now, I think we talked about this in the journal last week. I'll go through it again quickly. Take a page of your journal, divide it by 3, top, middle, bottom, and literally write 1 paragraph, very short paragraph, couple of sentences. This is what happened. This is what happened about that procrastination. This is what happened about me beating myself up with my inner critic. And then the middle section is, this is how it constantly makes me feel. This is how it makes me feel. And then the bottom one is, this is the solutions focused element, the bottom third. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to change it? Right? Now, this is where we come on to number 3 of this part of the exercise for too much, is get a different color pen in your journal and look at where these inner critic statements are. You know my style. We always talk, when I talk with clients across all sectors, all industries, all ages, I'm always talking about the inner critic and the inner coach. Inner critic takes us down and disempowers us. Inner coach lifts us up and makes us feel better about ourselves. What I want you to do in the journal, following on from this exercise, is, which inner critic statements are you saying to yourself or others? Because sometimes we put ourselves down to others as well, don't we? Oh, mum, I'm not this. Oh, mum, oh, husband, oh, wife, I'm not this, I'm not that. So we're doing it both ways. We're beating ourselves up from inside and out. So which inner critic statements are you saying to yourself and others, and when? And write them down. And then the 4th part of the exercise of this too much kind of tool is, which statements could you replace those inner critic statements with? Which more self-affirming, more positive? So for instance, catch yourself saying, I'm not good at this, I'm not a good enough partner, I'm not good at this. The minute you catch yourself, stop, almost like stop and go, no, I've got to stop feeding that energy, which is kind of putting me down. I'm putting myself down. Because, does this make sense? Is this an exercise you think you could work with?
It makes so much sense. Definitely, it makes so much sense. And I'm just going to quickly touch on this, Will, because I wrote this down today and it's so in line with what you said. I was listening to who me and Will follow, Dr. Joe Dispenza, this morning, and I've literally popped it on my phone. I'm going to read it to you. So he says, or in your journal, and it's similar to what you said, write down all the limiting and negative thoughts or beliefs that you think every day. Then write the emotions that you feel when you're thinking those thoughts, and then just sit with it for a while. So you've got that awareness. So it's like what you've mentioned. What are they? And he says, think about the emotion, the things that you feel. So if the thought is, I'm not good enough, and you feel bad, you feel
unworthy.
Unworthy. Yeah, you feel really uncomfortable. He says, sit with it for a while. Then he says, come back to the journal and write down all the positive thoughts and feelings and the emotions of the person you want to become, and the corresponding write down the thoughts of the person that you want to become and the corresponding feelings. So if that was, I want to become worthy, I want to feel good about myself, and then the thoughts, and the emotions. And then he says, and finally, write down the behaviors that would equate to those positive thoughts. So it all comes down to this awareness.
You've got to catch. You can't change anything, Emma, until you first
unless
notice
you're
it.
aware. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
exactly the same concept of this. I love this. I'm certainly going to give this one a go. So thank you.
It is
Um,
shocking how much we do too much
yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. One thing I've noticed as well over this last week from doing my heart math stuff, which I'm finding just phenomenal, is really taking time out just to do um, some breathing, just to
Mm,
calm everything down. Um, because I feel, especially being a mum, we're always running around. We're always, like I say, busy, and it's like that's become part of our DNA. We feel that we need to be busy because we're a mum. You know, we're not meant to be taking time out. There's always something we can be cleaning, and even if it's clean, we clean it again. Do you know what I mean? So one thing I've really been practicing quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and I set a timer on my phone, and it reminds me every hour, and I just sit there for a few minutes every hour and just take some deep breaths. And doing that consistently over the last few weeks, I can be anywhere. If I'm in the car, even if the kids are in the car, whatever it is I'm doing, I just say, right, just breathe deeper, just for a couple of minutes. So I'm getting some deep breaths, and I've noticed how much calmer I feel in myself just over the last couple of weeks of doing that.
brilliant, brilliant. Do you
Yeah,
fancy doing a quick little exercise for a minute just to finish off with?
let's go for it.
Right. So whoever's watching, including me, including you, Emma, let's close our eyes. Close your eyes and start breathing a bit deeper. Take some deeper breaths in, and then hold it, and then deeper breaths out. And put your hand on your heart, or both hands on your heart if you want to, and almost say to yourself, "Hello, heart. I know you serve me every day. Even though I'm not aware of you, you're still there for me, supporting me, feeding my body." Now, just let your mind drift off to one of the happiest experiences of your life. Remember, you're still doing your breathing, deep breathing. Let your mind just wander off to recently or a few years back, one of the happiest, most exciting, enthralling, uplifting experiences of your life. Now go into that experience. It's a memory, but if it's a strong enough memory, it has an emotional signature to it. Feel that emotion. Feel that emotion so much of you being there again, of laughing, of having a good time, of going back there. Feel that emotion so much that you can actually start to feel the tingle in your body now. The hairs might go up in different parts of your body, but you kind of feel it. Now, put your hand, remain your hand on your heart and ask your heart, what is it that you loved about that experience? And keep in that moment, keep in that moment. Now open your eyes. Now, how did you feel about that, Emma?
Fabulous. I was smiling. I couldn't not smile when I was thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was really
And
proud. I felt really proud of myself when I went back to the memory.
brilliant, brilliant. That's how powerful the body and the mind is. If I was to do the reverse for you, which I didn't want to do, if I was going to do the reverse for you, which was to take you back to the most horrendous moment,
Mm,
obviously my wife Jane would be a rape at 18. Mine would be my near-death experience in 1999. Now, I know that my heartbeat, rather than my breaths being really deep, like we were just now, and measured and
shallow.
calm, they would be
Mm,
shallow and panting and the rest of
yes.
it. And what you just said about the last few weeks, that is the best way to quickly bring the auto nervous system into what they call
Yes.
equilibrium, which is what Joe would talk about,
Yeah.
half Matt
Yeah.
talks about. They
Yes.
call it homeostasis, which is a
Yes.
balanced, harmonious state.
Yes.
It takes a few minutes. We're not talking about a half-hour yoga, sit on the mat exercise that
Yes.
everyone says, yeah, well done. I'm not going to have a chance to do that. This takes a minute or two, and we've got to do more of it.
Yeah. And it's consistency, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's doing it just for, even if it's a couple of minutes every day, and then you just build it from there. People try things like that and they'll do it once. They may not feel it and then they don't do it again, or they might do it for a week or so and go, I'm not getting the result I want,
yeah,
and not do it again.
yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that's one that's got to be in the toolkit, Will. And it's just those consistent small, tiny little actions.
And
Make
the
a massive
reason it works,
difference.
about taking yourself back, because what the ultimate goal in meditation is to, and this could take years, that's we've been meditating for like 10 years, so we're gradually getting there. The ultimate goal is to sort of not be able to think of anything and still have that lovely feeling that you just felt. Most people, because their minds are too busy, won't be able to sit with nothing.
Yes.
So if you're going to do the breathing exercise, accompany it with a good feeling memory as well. Because
Yes.
a memory, this is what I try to say to people, you can only have one memory in the seat at a time. You're either thinking of good things or bad things, positive things or negative. It's the law of polarity. So fill your mind with a good memory. It couldn't go anywhere else but happiness, could it?
Yeah. Oh, Will, I loved that. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your time today. Next week, we're running the webinar on Thursday next week, 10 o'clock, 24th. We're going to be talking about confidence, building confidence, self-love, self-compassion, and how we can take better care of ourselves. So I think it's going to be more aligned to what we've just finished off with, which is lovely. How we can take better care of ourselves so we don't burn ourselves out.
Brilliant. And,
so thanks again. Everybody that's been on, I'll be sending the replay link. And I won't be sending the slides because I sent this through last week. So yeah, we catch up with you next week. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
And see you next week, guys. Take care.
See you later.